Welcome, everyone. We'll give everybody just another minute or two to trickle in, and we'll go ahead and get the ball rolling here. Thanks for joining us, and we'll get started shortly. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining us for another installment in our webinar series. Today, we're going to be discussing working in the cloud, improving productivity through virtualization. A couple of housekeeping items here. We are recording this webinar. We'll be posting it on our resource page on our website. Links will be sent out to everyone who registered after the fact. So if you didn't get a chance to catch it all or would like to rewatch or share with colleagues or coworkers, please feel free to disseminate that link. Excuse me, microphones are all muted. We'll be doing question and answer via the chat pane. I will not be monitoring that during the webinar, but I will review that at the end and do my best to address every question that comes in. If you happen to be an existing customer of ASK, certainly you can leverage your CTMs as well as myself for questions that are specific to your organization. Another comment is, as usual, this is a live demo, so I will be bouncing around a little bit. I'm going to be showing off some of the virtual desktop capabilities of within the Microsoft stack, and we'll be bouncing around a little, so bear with me if I run into a snag or a little bit of a glitch. We'll get through it, but just an FYI, this is a live demo. And certainly I do reserve time after every one of these webinars. If you have particular questions that are specific to your organization, feel free to reach out to me. My contact information will be available at the end of the webinar. I'm happy to discuss, your particular needs and, how what we've talked about might fit or suit them. But with that said, we'll go ahead and dive in and get started. Excuse me. All right. Well, today we're going to go over, the three kind of key points to an infrastructure or to a work environment is, collaboration, the applications, and then the infrastructure that those applications utilize. And then by far, one of the key and most important pieces is identity and security. How do we ensure that the right person's logging in, has access to the appropriate things? Again, this will be a very Microsoft heavy presentation, as Microsoft's stack is built and designed from the ground up to work together, where identity and security can apply to a number of different applications and different collaboration platform, and all work together where you have single sign-on and you can utilize all of the apps within the infrastructure. It certainly works far better and more closely together than an amalgam of different software suites and packages where you have to have custom connectors that are written between the two of them so data gets transferred. Then heaven forbid one of the applications updates and breaks your custom connector, and then all of a sudden that integration doesn't work anymore. Microsoft has taken that all on themselves. They have provided a suite of products that are by design and by advertisement designed to work together, and they do work together and work together nicely. And the nice thing is, if they do break something, it's on Microsoft to fix it, and they have quite literally thousands of engineers and do move relatively rapidly on something that, a patch that does break things. So with that, we're going to dive into collaboration. I think all of us have felt this way in some way, shape, or form, one time or another. Collaboration is great, but it can definitely get messy. You can see we've got all kinds of stuff going on everywhere, various pieces of software, various devices, help for various projects, lots going on here. And I'm sure that we've all, at some point in time or another, felt this way. Well, the way to streamline that collaboration piece is Microsoft Teams. And I'm sure none of you are surprised if you've attended any of my previous webinars. You'll know that I'm a Teams fan. I have a real belief in the power of Teams and the collaboration it can bring to an organization. You can have all of your meetings. You can even do all of your phone calling in Teams. And this is where you can virtualize your desk phone. Quite literally, Microsoft has a phone system. You can have your phone number ring in through your Microsoft Teams client instead of to your desk phone or to your cell phone. there are certainly ways for your entire organization to switch to calling through Microsoft Teams, where you can transfer to extensions. It goes from team client to team client. And again, you can have your meetings, do your chat and your collaboration. The nice thing about the chat and collaboration is, depending on settings and security controls, you can indeed invite people from outside your organization to a particular piece of collaboration. If you need to involve a vendor or a third-party contractor on a project, you can bring them into Teams and they don't have to be licensed. Another nice piece with Teams is you can actually build out workflows and then you can publish apps within Teams. So your user base knows where to go to get whatever application they need, because you can, as a management team, put together a list of applications that are available through Teams. And then the user just goes here and can then, for example, download or install that particular application that is approved by the company. So to drill down just a little bit farther, you can put, Teams is, one of the key core functions of Teams is the meetings. And you can have live in-person meetings, video or face-to-face video meetings. I believe they've got 9 pane screens right now, and I believe that in public preview right now is a 49 pane Teams screen. So you'll actually can have up to 49 videos here very soon coming in at once. Now, why you would need to look at 49 different faces at the same time, that's a bit much for me. I really do like the 9 pane though. One note on Teams is you can have up to 250 internal and external participants on one of these meetings. And to be truthful, I don't think I'd want to have any more than that in a meeting. It would be a cacophony of noises, because remember, this is all two-way communication in a Teams meeting. You can also hold brainstorming sessions in documents through Teams, where you're talking with one another, but you're sharing a document. And then you're co-authoring that document at the same time. You'll notice in this slide here, you'll see these little different colors here. These are the different people that are involved in co-editing this document at the same time. And, kind of like what I'm doing today, you can deliver a training workshop where you can actually have some training material. You can invite people from in and outside of your organization and have a collaborative training workshop right through Microsoft Teams. Now, also through Teams are the live events. Now, this is more of a presentation where you can deliver a training to your customer or a partner. You can have a large company meeting where you need to present to a large number of folks. Or if you wanted to host a conference online, as an example, I just attended Microsoft Inspire, which I never would have been able to attend without the COVID situation and everything that's going on in the world today, because they took their entire conference virtual. Normally, this is a 3-4 day in-person convention center, 70,000 people type of scenario, whereas instead they had 30 to 45 minute sessions with different topics, with different instructors, and there was a lot of collaboration, but they did their entire conference through a live event in Microsoft Teams. To be truthful, that's how I'm presenting to you today, is through a live event in Microsoft Teams. So there's a ton of different uses for the Teams application. One other thing I think that gets left out often when people are thinking about Teams is you can invite people from outside your organization, as I mentioned. Now, there are some security concerns here, so you have to be judicious in this. Make sure that you're only inviting folks to the appropriate things for them to access. You certainly don't want them having carte blanche access to an entire team, but you may create a channel within your team for a project and invite that third party to that channel so they can collaborate with you. Again, it's not just for your inter-office use. It can be used to work with your various vendors and suppliers. It also can really do a great job to help aid employee communication. You can put up in Teams, you can put up employee communications, updates, news, announcements. You can do a lot with Microsoft Teams to keep your staff engaged, especially with a lot of us still having people scattered and working remotely here and there. You really can get messaging out very quickly through Microsoft Teams. And again, you can provide a lot of content here. It doesn't have to just be, a paragraph. You can include, the new marketing piece that's going out next week and want everybody to be aware. the new campaign, this, that, or the other. So you can really do a lot with Microsoft Teams to continue to establish that cohesion amongst your staff, especially if they're not seeing each other quite as often anymore. And honestly, probably the biggest thing that I love with Microsoft Teams is you can make it your own. Microsoft has Power Apps, which are low code automated workflows. So it doesn't require you to have a degree in coding or be proficient in some programming language. You can actually build workflows to automate things within Power Apps without being a programmer. So if there are repetitive tasks that are just time consuming that your folks struggle with making sure get done, maybe you could find ways to automate those using a Power App in Teams. I mean, here's an example here with Power Automate is there's an approval system that people have created where it's sent to a peer for review. The peer then approves it before it goes out to the client or the customer or the third party that's outside of your organization, just to get that extra set of eyes. It's a great way for just have somebody else check your work. It's a very easy way to go about it, and you can set that up all right through Microsoft Teams. So one of the biggest struggles that I see a lot of our clients facing is how do we roll out Teams? And then how do we get people to actually use it and use it well and use it appropriately? So first and foremost, select a small subset from your organization and get their buy-in. Have those folks start using it and bring them in from different functional groups. Because what might work out great for your operations people might be an absolute nightmare for your HR folks. And you don't want to be building everything based on your operations people if HR is not going to be able to use it or use it well or efficiently. So you need a cross-section of your organization and start with just using it, play with it, see what it can do, ask questions, do research, look things up, see how it can benefit your company and its workflows. And then you can deploy it and start using the meetings and audio conferencing, start creating your first teams and channels. You can start looking at what, maybe some Power Apps that might be useful to you based on the automation that you would need to automate some of these really dull, mundane tasks. And then drive adoption. You really have to work with your users. You work with your staff and your other employees. Encourage them. Take their feedback. Give them guidance. Give them training. Because if you just throw Teams at 12 different people, you're going to have 12 different versions of how people think it should be. And that is just going to become a complete and total mess on the back end. Nobody's going to know where everything is. It's going to be a disaster. So yeah, I understand that you're going to have 12 different opinions. Well, get those opinions ahead of time, talk through them, and start, trialing out those various opinions to find out what's going to work best for your organization. This is not something that you just snap your fingers and do in a week, but at the same time, it's such a powerful tool that when fully utilized can increase productivity tremendously. So it's something that's very, very much worth looking into. Find a training online on YouTube or engage with a partner to do a workshop with your staff. Find ways to learn more about this because this is, I foresee that this is something that's going to be incredibly powerful and the vast majority of companies are going to be using it for, in my opinion, at least the next decade. So I would highly recommend getting on the train. So now let's move into apps and infrastructure a bit. Wanted to go over just a couple of quick things on the application side of the house with the Microsoft 365 stack that most people don't seem to really understand or are aware of. Now, I do have to give this caveat that a lot of what I'm going to tell you is going to be subjective based on the policies and security procedures of your individual organization. Some of these things may just not be allowed within your organization, or if they're not today, and you really would like them to, maybe there's ways to make it happen. But certainly the policies and procedures of your organization are going to trump what Microsoft says you can do. But with that said, a licensed user of the Microsoft 365 suite has the rights to install those applications on up to 5 PCs, plus 5 tablets, plus 5 phones per user. So quite literally, you could have it on your work machine. You could have your Office suite installed on your home computer. You could have it installed on that laptop that you take with you when you travel. You could have it on your tablet, and then you can also have it on your smartphone. And that's all perfectly acceptable as far as Microsoft's concerned. And the wonderful thing about this is it all reaches back into Microsoft Azure as its home. So as long as you have an internet connection, all of those various devices are going to be in sync. You make an edit on your work computer, and then you come home on a project and you fire up your home computer. You can pick that file right back up right out of your OneDrive and continue working on it right where you left off at the office. Completely different machine. The idea of the document is on the machine is behind us, in my opinion, and should start to get behind us in that mentality of, oh, I can't access that because it's on my computer. Store it in OneDrive. That way you can access it from anywhere. So as I mentioned, you can collaborate in real time between all of the various apps, the web, the mobile, the desktop. I've literally had meetings where I've had colleagues and coworkers where I happened to be on my smartphone. A couple of coworkers were using a tablet, and then the rest of them were using laptops. So again, all of the tools are available to you. And again, we'll get into it here in a little while when we dive into the security and identity. But the wonderful thing about this is once you've signed in with your credentials on that device, regardless of the application you open within the suite, you have access. So again, this also shows the mobile app. You can have your email, your calendaring, all of your various documents. I'm going to be honest, I don't know who would think to try to manipulate an Excel file on a smartphone, but depending on your screen size and how small your fingers are, you may be able to pull it off. But certainly you can access and view and edit any of the Office applications on your phone, just like you could on your desktop computer or on a tablet. So the one thing that we run into is complexity of business process. Lots of stuff going on. And this is where the Microsoft stack really truly does bring all of this together. We've got anything from shipping and patients to device data, relationships between folks, merchandise, all of these things are involved in your business process in some way, shape, or form. The Microsoft stack does a wonderful job of bringing that all together. So as you can see, they have their CRM, their Microsoft Dynamics, does all of their analytics. Here is the key piece, is the Microsoft 365 stack with Teams, Planner, To-Do, Outlook, SharePoint. This is also where you'll find your Word, Excel. Again, you got your Power Apps for your automation, your gathering of data. You have Azure for development, and you have your Microsoft Project for your web. So, but where we're really keying is on this piece right here. Using these tools, Microsoft To-Do with the tasks list, Outlook for email, Teams for collaboration, and of course your productivity pieces, Planner for your organization. So again, this is the piece that really, I think, benefits a lot of clients or of our customers and a lot of businesses, is all of these pieces working well together and having access to them from virtually anywhere. So with that, now we're going to get into a newer product from Microsoft. Some of you may be familiar with the old RDS, or remote desktop service, where you can remote into a computer from home, a computer at the office from home, or there was a remote desktop server that had Windows 7 or Windows 10 desktops available, so you could log in and access those. Kept you part of the organization. Well, Microsoft has built a far better and more improved version, in my opinion, which is Windows Virtual Desktop. So this is a Windows desktop that is housed in Microsoft Azure that is available for you to connect to via a web browser. So with that, I'm actually going to pop over to my WVD session, my Windows Virtual Desktop session, and we'll pick this PowerPoint back up there because all of my files are available to me either place. So now we'll just bring my browser over. And as you can see here, we've got my PowerPoint up. In fact, I'm just going to minimize this real quick. So here's my desktop. Here are my files that were sitting on my desktop. I have my OneDrive folder here with my PowerPoint. If I wanted to, I could actually even go to the browser in the virtual desktop. Let's make this a little bigger for everybody. And I can access my OneDrive here. I could also continue with the PowerPoint here if I wished. But this is a completely functional Windows 10 desktop that I can use and work out of on a day in, day out basis if I so chose, that I've accessed through a web browser. And I can do this from quite literally any place I have internet access. Now, again, without some kind of adapter to be able to hook up a keyboard and mouse, I really wouldn't want to do this on my smartphone just because of the lack of real estate on the screen, but it's certainly something that can be done. So with that, we'll go ahead and pick this back up. So with Windows Virtual Desktop, it delivers a Windows 10 experience. It enables all of the Office 365 apps. And again, it's something that can be deployed and scaled in quite literally minutes once it's set up. So this can give you a complete cloud environment with a full desktop in the cloud that you access just via web browser. All of the processing and compute is done on Microsoft's backend. So you really don't even need a device with a ton of horsepower to be able to run this, because the CPU that this virtual desktop is using is actually in Azure. It's not taxing the system that I'm using to access this. I just need something with a decent web browser and enough memory to be able to not run out. So this slide can be a little bit much, but I do want to go over this just briefly. So basically with Windows Virtual Desktop, there's just a subscription. You have a full desktop, you get Microsoft 365 licensing, includes your Windows 10 enterprise licensing. So basically, this is the stuff that you would control as the customer. You would need to at least set up the policies to control. What should these users have access to? What apps are published to them? How are they going to authenticate? Things like that. And then everything else is handled by Microsoft. So they do the gateway to it. They take care of the client. They take care of all of the compute, the storage, the networking to the virtual machine. So they take care of a lot of that heavy lifting that requires that high-end IT person. The person that you don't even know honestly exactly what he does at your office, because he's there fixing the server and looking at a black screen with white text sometimes. And Microsoft handles all of that back end for you and keeps it up to date, patched, and most current at all times. So this is a great way of having a nice, clean, fresh, up-to-date version of Microsoft 365 and Windows 10 available to your user base every time they log in. So working remotely, the big piece is now you're away from those corporate protections. You're no longer behind that corporate firewall. You may be using a device that doesn't have the corporate antivirus or anti-malware on it. So how do we make sure that we are who we say we are and we do have rights to log into these? So we'll get to that here in just a moment, but this really comes down to secure access. We have to make sure we establish secure access for our staff so that when they log in, when they sign in, they have, oh, yeah, there we go. Sorry about that. We have confirmed their identity. And that all starts with Microsoft Azure Active Directory. This is the key to single sign-on security. Once the users were built out in Azure Active Directory, it is the single control plane for all of the Microsoft 365 stack. So for example, if I go to access a Word document, Word is going to reach out to Azure Active Directory to confirm that I am who I say I am before it's going to allow me to open that Word document. I fire up my Outlook. Outlook automatically sends my credentials. It checks them against Microsoft Azure AD just to make sure that I am who I say I am. This way, I'm not having to log into everything all the time. I've confirmed that I am who I say I am through Microsoft Azure AD, and all of the applications that I use connect to it to confirm my identity. While we're on this subject, I do want to bring up that multi-factor authentication is the key to this. You should not just have a password. It should be more than just a password and an authenticator app, a password and a text code, password and a phone call, something to confirm your identity, something you know and something you have. I'll get off my soapbox now. You can also publish apps to all of your users. And again, this goes back to Azure AD. You can control within Azure Active Directory which group those people are associated with, and then based on those groups, what applications should be available to members of those groups. So you really can make this very easy for a user to just log in from a random computer. And once they've signed in, the apps that they should have available to them then become available to them. And again, if with the Windows Virtual Desktop, you can have it when that desktop gets spun up, all of these apps are provided to the user automatically. That is done through Microsoft Intune, which is their deployment engine. We'll talk about that just in a little while, but that is where you can, that's part of Azure Active Directory, and it's a way for you to set up which user has access to what and what is automatically sent to them and what isn't. Another piece with this is, again, like I mentioned, all this comes down to the security policies of your organization, but you can bring in people with accounts from other Azure AD organizations, for a collaboration on a project or things of that nature. You can add users with their Microsoft account, social IDs, phone numbers, email passcodes. There's various ways to bring people in and bring them in securely, so you know for sure that it is the person that you invited that is coming in, not some random person that intercepted your email or intercepted your invite. So again, this one does a great job of kind of showing the flow. So the sign-in request comes in, it goes to Azure Active Directory. It then confirms user and location. You may very well have a geofence set up where if you're outside of a certain geography, you can't log in. Maybe it looks device, the application, all of these look to Azure Active Directory. And then there's a policy decision, allow access, require MFA, again, multi-factor authentication. I cannot stress this enough. This thwarts 90+% of cyber attacks just by having this secondary form of authentication. Again, you can limit access based on the credentials provided. This person has access to only these things. Or if these credentials are provided and we don't know what they are, or even if we know what they are, we can have that set to block access if that's appropriate. So again, this is the flow of the communication. I'm the user, I sign in, it requests access based on my credentials that I provide. One of these triggers happens, and then I have access to my apps and data. So you also can extend these data protections to the devices. You can have mobile device management, which you can enroll a device into, and then you can control the work data that's on that device. Now, you even have the granularity that if it's an employee's personal device, you can control just the work data. So for example, if that employee enrolls their device and then 6 months later decides it's time for them to go, and it is what it is, you then can remove just the corporate data from their personal device, leaving their personal data behind. So it's a great way to manage devices. I like to share a little story. We had a customer that had a number of iPads that were assigned out for their user base to do their jobs. And every once in a while, an iPad would come up missing. And that was a really, kind of a scary thing for them. So they looked at some mobile device management options, and they found that you could actually geofence. And so they drew a virtual fence around the parking lot of their business. And those iPads functioned perfectly when they were within that geofence. But you took that iPad off campus, it ceased to function. You couldn't log in, you couldn't access any of the data on it until it was brought back within the geofence. So it's a great way of controlling, device control, that shrink of, somebody deciding that, oh, this is nice, I want to take that home, as well as making sure to control what people access, what can be installed, what can't be installed, things of that nature. And then along with that is mobile application management, where you can actually push applications to devices where you enroll with that iPad as an example, and then you have 4 or 5 applications that those users need to use. Well, you can have those apps published and pushed to those iPads, so the users don't have to go and install them. You don't have to have your setup guy go in and install them. It's done automatically for you. As soon as it powers on, it pulls them down and it prompts them for their credentials to log in, and then provides them with the appropriate level of access based on those credentials. So I know I've gone through a ton of data here, and I've kind of hit this all rapid fire, but I'm really trying to bring together the 3 key pieces. And with the Microsoft 365 stack, they fit so nicely together. A powerful tool for collaboration, both inside and outside your organization. the applications and the infrastructure necessary for your people to be able to do their jobs and do your jobs effectively. And then the identity and security management to ensure that the people, that your folks are who they say they are when they log in, and that your data is as protected as it possibly can be. So now, as I said, we've gone over a lot. How do we deal with this? How do we start to look to possibly implement some of this? How do we, where do we begin? This is a giant iceberg. Let's chip off a couple ice cubes here. So my first and foremost is, if you are not a Microsoft 365 user, there has never been a better time to give it a shot. Microsoft is still offering their 6-month trial of their E1 licensing. So even if you don't pay them a dime for anything, you can download this trial and use it for a couple of months just to see how it works. So also look at, what are some of the business challenges that you're experiencing? And I'm sure a lot of our businesses have changed dramatically in the last 6 to 8 months. We may have a whole new set of challenges to deal with. What are the things that are really holding us back? What are the problems that we're having? And then start to really, kind of experience it, immerse yourself into the various pieces of the Microsoft stack that might be able to help with those challenges. See how they can help, seek out experts, ask for consultations, talk to folks, do research. Take a little bit of time and look at this, because this isn't going anywhere. This is not just a fly-by-night thing that'll be gone in 2 years. Microsoft is building their foundation around these things. And then once you've gotten that experience, and I think this really could work, then you can really assess the business case. You can start to build a proof of concept, pilot the technology to validate, does it really do what we think it's going to do to fix that problem that we're having? So certainly a great first step, reach out to us here at ASK. We'd be happy to help you out. We have a team of very helpful individuals that can be very creative when it comes to business challenges. Be happy to help you see how the Microsoft stack can specifically help your business and the challenges that you're experiencing, because every business is very, very different. So some additional resources. We do have our resource center. We are going to be renaming this just our resource center. We'll be dropping the COVID-19. We will still have all of the resources there. Certainly ASK, as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar here, I do reserve the hour after this webinar for phone calls, you respond to emails, things like that. So if you do have questions, just want to talk through something, please feel free to reach out. My phone number will be here on a couple of slides, and I'll make sure that's up for a little while. Microsoft still does maintain a phenomenal YouTube channel. And I know I pointed folks, this is probably, if you've attended my webinars, this is the 6th or 7th time I brought this up, but there's a ton of really good content out there that's targeted at that end user, that person that isn't real tech savvy, that just, I use Word, I use Excel, I use PowerPoint for presentations, use Outlook for my email. That's what I do. But they don't, you're not a developer or anything like that. They've got a lot of really great videos on use cases, how companies have used it, creative thoughts and suggestions. They also have a document library. So if you want to dig down and dig deep into a particular topic, now, I'll be honest, their document library, in my opinion, is bottomless. I mean, it is in a tremendous amount of information. Search feature works fairly well, and you can glean some very good information out of there. It just might take a little hunting. Another great source of information is your existing IT staff. I mean, nobody knows your business and your IT challenges better than your staff. So reach out to them, talk to them about some of these ideas, and see what their thoughts are. I mean, there may be some that they just didn't think of, or they've been pushing for a year to get implemented and they just haven't gotten any traction yet. They'd love to hear from you on that. And as I mentioned earlier, that the licensing promotion is still going on. So for those of you that aren't Microsoft 365 subscribers today, you can get that licensing promo and get the online versions of all of the productivity tools. So with that, go ahead and wrap this up. I hope you can join us here in 2 weeks. We'll be talking about how to improve security with remote workers. With everybody being scattered so much, I mean, we touched on a little bit here with the single sign-on and the Azure Active Directory, but there's a lot more to talk about when it comes to remote security and how we can improve that for our staffs and our coworkers. So please join me on the 11th of August for that one. And with that, I'll go ahead and leave this one open. Here's my email. There's my phone number. Feel free to reach out with questions or concerns. And I'm just going to go ahead and hop over into chat and see what kind of questions we have here. Okay, I have a question here. I'll go ahead and publish this one. All right, how do network printers at multiple locations work? I'll be honest, that can be a difficult one. That really comes down to your setup, how things are connected, and making sure that the right virtual machine gets mapped to the appropriate printer set. Printing from virtual is, I'll be truthful, is a bit of a challenge. It's one of those things that occasionally will hiccup. It's one of those few ones that they've got fairly well licked, in my opinion, but there are still some occasional problems that come up with this guy. And, those network printers can be a bit of a challenge. I wish I had a better answer for you than that, but again, it really comes down to the circumstance. And I'm pretty sure I think I know who posed this question, and I'd be happy to chat with you afterwards if you'd like to talk about it further. All right, so let's see. So again, I don't have a perfect answer for that, but again, it really comes down to how things are set up, ensuring the right printers are mapped to the right folks, and ensuring the connections between where those folks live and those printers is live and open. All right. Do we have any other questions here? Oh, looks like that covers them all. Well, at this point, I want to thank everybody for attending. Really appreciate people showing up for this. I hope this has been at least somewhat informative for everybody. And by all means, please reach out to us if you have any questions. Would just like to talk through this. See how it could benefit you. We're here to help. So with that, thanks, and we'll see you here in a couple of weeks.